I'm just going to call it what it is for folks that have used learning pathways. Up until I launched this latest content update, there were a lot of dead links. We have pruned the tree, if you will, and removed all the dead content and really taken stock of what's there and made it better.
Okay, with that, the church bells just rang, and it is now time for Ask and Praxis. Today is November 12th, 2025, and we will be discussing what's new with Microsoft 365 Learning Pathways. The gang is mostly here. We are sadly missing Julie and Todd. So I am stepping in, doing my best Julie impersonation to get us through this. So today we're talking about what's new with Microsoft 365 Learning Pathways.
Woo!
We'll cover what is Microsoft 365 Learning Pathways, what's new, some of the features, how to deploy it in your own tenant, what's new from the community supported model, scenarios, tips and tricks, and of course we'll end with some resources. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Derek because he is our main presenter today because this is his pride and joy. So Derek, take it away.
All right, I will. So I'm sure a lot of folks have seen me talk about learning pathways. I have been working with this tool now, I think, for like the last 3 or 4 years. But I really, really love it because I feel like it is an incredibly valuable solution. For folks that haven't seen Learning Pathways or don't know what it is a SharePoint framework web part that allows us to create a customizable learning platform for your organization. It is what I call it either a micro learning platform, or I actually had Joy Apple from Orchestry. I was talking with her about this tool, and she called it a snackable learning, and that's how I'm referring to this now. Snackable learning. It's not a full meal. It's not a full training. It's just a little bite. It's a little bite-sized chunk. So it gives you that like micro snackable learning ability. It can also be used as a custom learning platform. So if you have customized content that you want to create for your own applications, you can embed that and use that inside Learning Pathways. It gives us the ability to blend Microsoft created content and our custom content to really create a tailor fit for our organization's governance needs, right? So if you don't use Access or you're not using Sway, you don't need to share that information out to the end users. And next. Okay, so for folks that haven't seen Learning Pathways before, there are a bunch of different features with the tool. The first is it comes with a SharePoint framework web part that you can embed on any SharePoint page that you create. And we'll talk about some of the common scenarios in a couple of minutes. But basically, you want to throw it in, you can do it just like an image web part or a text web part. You can drop it on the page and share your knowledge, share that information, that training information on any site. You can also embed it as a Teams tab inside of a team or as a personal app. So you can use it as a Teams tab and maybe put specific, department-specific information or learning in a department team, or provide an open portal as a Teams personal app in the left-hand rail. It supports 10 languages. Now, I mean, most of the folks on this call are probably working for English-based for English-based companies, but if you are not, it supports English, French, Spanish, German, Italian, Japanese, Chinese, Russian, Brazilian, Portuguese, and Dutch. And so it's all the languages, the UI and the content itself. I think I said this a little bit, ability to custom visibility of content for your organization. So, literally putting exactly what you want on the page and surface that custom content. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the custom analytics webhook that's involved in a couple of minutes. And if folks have questions, just drop them in the chat. All right, so we just had a new release. So first is we just did a very large content update. And it, of course, included a lot of Copilot content. There's a whole new section specifically for Copilot, all the different little, nuances, Copilot in Word, Copilot in PowerPoint, all of those. But we've also added whiteboard content and Microsoft To-Do content. Now, I'm just going to call it what it is for folks that have used Learning Pathways. Up until I launched this latest content update, there were a lot of dead links. We have pruned the tree, if you will, and removed all the dead content and really taken stock of what's there and made it better. We've also done some technical updates in the background, and folks really wouldn't necessarily notice this, but we updated the SharePoint framework version and we updated the version of PNP.js. So it got a little technical refresh to it as well. We've increased accessibility for folks that have disabilities. So we've increased that level, and the custom analytics webhook, which was a big thing that Julie added, which I wish she was here to talk about it. But essentially, when you turn this on now, you can get a record of any asset that anybody clicks on. And depending on your organization, you can decide whether or not you want it to be anonymous or not. All of this data just spits it out to a webhook that you can then do whatever you want with. You could create a Logic app, you could create a Power Automate if you had to. You could create an Azure function that accepted this webhook, the data from the webhook, and then put the data in a database, put the data in Power BI, and let you run metrics and reports so that you can get real-time analytics on how your content's being used, who's consuming it, and how it's being consumed. And I think that's that's something that folks were asking for big time over the history of the features. I mean, we also included with the recent updates a bunch of feature updates and bug fixes. Small little things that folks were asking about, like making sure that see if you could make the search box more persistent, or making sure that the header stayed stuck to the top of the page. But those were all sort of smaller little things. All right, and I'm in the process right now of working on the latest content update, which is going to come in the form of Power Platform content, because there's none of that in there right now.
Well, let's get some in there, Derek.
I know. I've been slacking on that. All right, so for many of us, we look back very fondly on the lookbook. And for many years, the lookbook was the only way that you could, well, not the only way, but the easiest way for you to get Learning Pathways installed in your tenant. You can't do that anymore because the lookbook is dead. But what we can do is we can still install that site template. Essentially, there's a couple of different ways for you to install Learning Pathways. The first is to install that site template that the lookbook provisioned. The way it works is you have to create a Learning Pathways site collection, download and install the PNP Learning Pathways site template using PowerShell. That option will provision all 10 languages for you. So if you want multilingual setup, you can go and do that right away. It will also provision all these different pre-configured pages in all of those languages. So you can make sure that you've got the sort of whole learning portal space. If you really just want to install it and build your own, like do your own thing, you can do that as well by just creating the Learning Pathways website, installing the solution just like you would any other custom SharePoint framework solution, and then running a configuration script that's in the repository. So it's not a huge bar, but you do need to be a site collection admin, and you do need to know how to run PowerShell, PNP PowerShell. So it's really it's not hugely crazy, but you do You do. The chat is on fire right now. So yeah, you do need to know how to do those things in order to install it. It's not as easy as the lookbook made it seem. Next, here's an example of the site template. You can see this provisions an entire site for you. It's got navigation, it's got links to all the different pages like M365 training, working remotely, recommended content, and then sort of a question and answer space. And then the web part is down here at the bottom. Next, please.
No, you're moving too fast.
All right, I'll slow down. So this is really the important part, and the one thing that I am really excited about. For folks that have worked with learning pathways in the past, we've been in a drought. Microsoft has. This was previously a partnership between Microsoft and the community, and what that means is that Microsoft was responsible for the content. They would also provide some funding for major feature releases or major enhancements. But at the end of the day, they were in charge of any and all content that came through, including all the translations. The problem with that is that it became a challenge sometimes to get content updated in a timely manner from Microsoft folks. And that led to maybe like a year or a year and a half between major content releases. And that's not really something that we were in control of. However, right now, as of today, actually as of like a couple of weeks ago, we are now open for community members to make content requests. So if you want to contribute and ask for content related to Whiteboard or Sway or the Power Platform or any of those things, you can now do that. We've created a specific issue in the repository for you to come in here and you can ask, tell me what content you want, and we'll help create that playlist for you. Our goal here is to basically help respond better and quicker to the community and to be able to add content in a timely fashion for new products, right? So if we shouldn't have to wait 3 years or 4 years for something for the Power Platform that's been out for a very long time. So we have the ability to start adding that content. Right now, we can only accept content requests that link to support.microsoft.com. And that's for a couple of different reasons. The first is that at the end of the day, all this content gets pulled in through an iframe. And I have a specific endpoint that we can use on the support.microsoft.com URL that will allow that to happen. So that's the one restriction here. But you can go to the repository, create an enhancement request, and let me know that it's for content, and we can work on that. So please submit your content requests. Go next, Patrick.
Well, I think there might have been some questions happening in the chat, mainly about if there's anything that some Praxis may have in their collection of things to help people install, maybe.
You're right, Patrick. Yes, Praxis offers a jump start for Microsoft 365 learning pathways. And what we will do with that is we will meet with you and we will help you, we'll give you all the prerequisites, and we will help you install Microsoft 365 learning pathways in your environment. We have a set of instructions, we have a set of scripts, and we run through the entire script, and you will leave that encounter with a working learning pathways site.
That was actually Julie who mentioned it, and I cut off. I mentioned it before Carol got a chance to. But we did have another question.
Yep. Okay.
Which was from Tony, who says, "Does this integrate with Viva Learning?"
And the answer to that is no. The reason is no APIs. There are no APIs with Viva Learning, so we cannot integrate with anything without an API. No, the big differences between, so Microsoft 365 Learning Pathways is not an LMS. Is that snap micro learning. I suppose if you wanted to, you could integrate it with your LMS, but you would need some kind of customization to the code. Now, Viva Learning, on the other hand, it will support content like this. However, it doesn't support playlists, like curated content that you sort of knit together. And it also doesn't support SharePoint pages. It'll support documents, but it doesn't support SharePoint pages. So if you need custom content that you're writing, you can include that in Viva Learning. Any other questions?
Go ahead,
Mark.
Yeah. I was going to say there's a point that Nick Wood made, because it used to be available under the lookbook. It was seen as Microsoft sanctioned, Microsoft provided. Now that it's in GitHub, it's a tougher conversation, and we can help with those conversations. Things that are managed by the PNP community, which this is a part of, are sanctioned by Microsoft but not provided by Microsoft. So it's an adjacent but not exactly.
Yeah, the thing is that Learning Pathways has always been hosted out of, well, not hosted, but in a community tool. It's always been living in GitHub. The content, as a matter of fact, is all served out of a CDN in a GitHub repository. I do agree, Nick, the lookbook.microsoft.com, that .microsoft.com domain did provide sort of this level of sanctions, but the code hasn't changed since then. It was how you get it installed. And quite honestly, that was a website that you were giving, very elevated credentials to. I would say the one thing that the difference here is that when you installed from the lookbook, you needed to be a global admin or a tenant admin. I think it was a tenant admin. Here, you only need to be a site collection administrator. You do not need to be an admin. And that's a big thing because you were going cross, into the tenant from the lookbook, you needed that elevated level of privileges. And so here you only need site collection administrator. All right. Any other questions? Yeah. Oh,
did
Igor? I think Igor, did you have a question, or was that just a miss?
That was a miss. I meant to do a reaction. Sorry, folks.
Okay, no worries at all. You can come off mute. Nobody cares. All right.
I was just gonna. There was one thing. There was a question that wasn't in the chat. If you could go back one slide. There was a question that wasn't in the chat that was asking which Microsoft MVP was spearheading this community-supported effort. If there was any details that you wanted to share, Derek.
Julie built the original version of Learning Pathways. She and Stefan Bauer built the original code. They maintained it for many years. I took it over after she was done. But yes, I have been working with my Microsoft counterparts to pull this 100% into the community, and it's been a little while. So, yeah, Patrick.
No, I did the same thing.
And huzzah to you, Derek.
You can tell.
Sorry, it's great that you've been so. What's the right word? Diligent in your efforts.
I really believe in this tool, and I refuse to let it wither on the vine. And so that's why I really feel like it's worth investing in, and really worth in putting in your tenants. And in fact, I think for me at least, this and the PNP search are the two web parts that I install in just about every client tenant. Mark, Carrie, Patrick, I mean,
I do the same
maybe
thing.
not everyone,
I definitely recommend it.
Super valuable, yeah.
Okay. Well, all right. All right, so this is sort of like the Derek show, I guess, but I wanted to include a couple of different scenarios for how we tend to use learning pathways. And Mark, Patrick, Mark's plural. If you have some things to add or talk about, please jump in. But the first one is really as a self-service learning portal. You can either use that site template as just a generic place for folks to get Microsoft specific content and training, or you can use it as the Teams app and you can plug it in there. And really bring that Microsoft content into where people are working. One of the things that I've seen done is using this for department specific training. I alluded to this earlier. Say your accounting team, you want to bring them up to speed on the new features of Power BI, right? Or maybe not Power BI, but maybe like Excel or whatever it is. It really doesn't matter. You can pin that to their department team in the general channel or in a training channel, if you will. And you can have them surface that content right there in Teams, or if they're using SharePoint, you can do it in their SharePoint team site. So it really doesn't matter, but you bring it contextually to where the user is at and where they're actively doing their work.
I'll just say one thing that I have always liked just from the concept of it, and I bet in practice it gets used a lot, is the notion of custom playlists. So you've already stated that you can put in your own custom training. There's a lot of content that comes from Microsoft or support.microsoft.com, and the blend of the two of what makes sense for my organization, what do they need to learn. There's the basics for Microsoft, and then we built this custom widgety thing or a policy, submission practice or whatever that might be, and to put that into the flow of what it is that they want their employees to focus on. Just the notion of a playlist is great. Just the notion of custom content is great. But a custom playlist that blends it all, that gives them a flow and gets them in and out is, I think, really important.
Yeah.
And one thing that oh, go ahead, Carrie.
I was just going to say, especially like for new hires who I would say probably struggle with where do I go to find all the things? It really suits them really well to be able to go to that one place and find all that tools and processes and step-by-step stuff that they're looking for.
Yeah, I think Patrick, go ahead.
No, I was just laughing because Carrie and I were working on another project and our brains are just synced because she just said what I was going to say. So
we've been doing this all day, Patrick and I.
That falls under business process guideline, that onboarding, 30, 60, 90-day goals, end year review process, right? Those are things that you can do. Those are business processes that you can write up in your HR site, for instance, and surface as a playlist inside of Learning Pathways and then embed it on a page. So in your HR site, for instance, you could have a review process page on your communication site and pull in the different playlists for how to do your self-review. When do you need to get it done by? All the different FAQs that you may have around that review process. And, Mark, you brought up custom applications. So you built a proposal approval process and there's different portions of it. Maybe IT built the application for it. And so they manage part of the training information. Maybe it's part of procurement. So procurement needs to say, how do you add a vendor? How do you get that information? So you can knit all of that together in the common playlist and then embed it on a page, maybe where the app lives.
Yeah, I think one of the cool things you can do here is use the Learning Pathways capabilities to build up an inventory of training chunks, which is a technical term. And then combine those chunks together in many different ways, right? I mean, those playlists are things that you just get from Microsoft for Excel, for example. But you can build your own playlist that has nothing to do with any of Microsoft's content. And as you're doing that, you're building up all of those chunks of content that can live anywhere in your tenant. and the people who are managing them just manage them, but the playlist lives on. I mean, I sound like I'm a cheerleader here, but it really is a versatile approach to getting learning content out into the organization that is managed in a very smart information architecture sort of lattice.
And Mark, you remember, we've been doing this a long time. It used to be in 2007, 2010, 2013, there was an entire industry built up around training people on how to use Office and SharePoint, right?
Yeah.
You would invite a trainer to come into your company and train your users for like a week. And you don't need to do that anymore because the platform is moving so quickly, you can't keep the training material up to date. And this is constantly up to date. When Microsoft updates the content on support or learning pathways is automatically updated.
Yeah, and it's taking that same content and gluing it together in different configurations that are much more useful. I mean, we tend to go to support.microsoft.com by searching and landing on a page when you might need a pathway to go from A to B.
A learning pathway?
Maybe.
But bum. All right. I don't know. Anybody else have any other questions?
Derek, I was going to ask, have you ever tried to sort of track progress in there, like with some kind of a quiz or like to sort of capture high level people have gone through certain playlists or anything like that?
I have. So you can do that with the web analytics, right? So if you want to track who's, you can track that through the thing, through the custom analytics webhook. However, one of the things that we've suggested that folks do is like take a Microsoft form at the end, like create a playlist and create a form at the end, and then have them submit that form at the end of the thing, right? So somebody asked us if they could use this for like that they read a policy.
And they attestation.
They attested to the policy. So you could put policy X on a page, and then at the end you could put, the attestation form and just say, by clicking this, you're attesting that you read and understand this form. And then that can write into a list, and then you're done, right? So you can start to, that's a little bit more advanced, but you can start to do stuff like that if you want to, or you can dive into the webhook.
Yep.
So,
Derek, we did have a follow-up question from Nick as well.
Yeah, sure.
Which is the old lookbooks installed learning pathway still okay to use, or should it be removed and the GitHub version be used?
If you have installed learning pathways via the lookbook, you probably have version 4. That's just the SharePoint, the SharePoint framework version, the version of the web part that we put out there. You can download the latest, if you're on V4, and it'll tell you in the tenant app catalog or the site collection app catalog what version you have. There is an easy upgrade path from 4 to 5. You can just overwrite redeploy the version 5 solution from GitHub, and it'll be perfectly fine. If you're running version 3, you need to upgrade. You would need to run the upgrade because there was a big schema change. But again, the tool itself should walk you through that. It's got a wizard that will help you do that.
Okay. So we have some resources that you'll be able to click in at some point once we get this uploaded. So Derek has provided those for us. Thank you very much, Derek, for the well-informed and enthusiastic talking. We certainly appreciate it, and it certainly helps us get excited for these things like learning pathways.
And
all
please
right,
contribute.
Our next. Oh yeah, that was the other key thing I think you forgot to mention, which is if you want to help, message Derek. Our next SM Praxis, November 26th, we're talking about the Microsoft Ignite recap. And see us live. Not presenting, but Derek and I will be at ESPC Dublin December 1st through 4th. So if you're attending, feel free to say hello. And then the M365 Community Days Miami Conference, Julie, Mark, and Mark will be there. That's February 6th in Miami, Florida. And then some other things that are potentially on the horizon in the spring. The Microsoft 365 Community Conference and the European Collaboration Summit, which we hope to see people at. That is it for us. Thank you very much for attending. We always appreciate it. Great questions, and we will look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you so much for joining us this week on Ask and Praxis. We love getting your questions or session ideas. You can submit by using the link in About. If you find this helpful, hit that like or subscribe button and share this content with your colleagues.